Welcome back to The Real Deal. I'm your host, Kim Hollingshead. Guys, we are here talking about interest rates and what in the world. The beginning of the year, at the end of last year, everyone was super optimistic about the housing market here in Middle Tennessee. It was wild. I mean, I'm in this industry, so I have the privilege of being able to talk to people from all these different organizations, the associations of realtors, the Mortgage Bankers Association. We get to read the news out of Zillow and Redfin, bankrate.com. Everyone was optimistic. Everybody saw that inflation was coming down in the U.S., and that means that interest rates are going to come down. We all knew that once interest rates kind of hit that mid-fives point, that it was a really strong indication that the housing market was going to bounce back, that those property owners, the sellers who have their homes in these 2.75, 3% interest rates, that the interest rate, the current rate is low enough that they feel comfortable that they can sell their house, tap into the equity, buy something else, and they're comfortable with that rate of 5%, knowing that the rate is even going to fall further. They would be able to probably refinance in a year or 2 years from now and lower that rate even more. There was this general feeling that houses were not going to sit on the housing market as long. And realtors were really excited. We were pumped about the spring season and all of the real estate, moving around in Middle Tennessee. Even the new construction home builders were starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. They could see that the Fed chair was going to be replaced sometime soon and that the Fed rate was going to come down, which meant that rate on all of their construction loans would lower and they would be able to pocket a little more cash and have a little more breathing room when it came to negotiating purchase prices. But right when we started to see that rates were just maybe going to go into the fives a little bit, boom, this war breaks out in Iran. Rates are back up into, the mid-6 range. And the housing market has stalled out. It has kind of just sucked all the wind out of our sails. It was sort of terrible. What are we going to see moving into the short term? Well, it depends on what happens. Of course, we always say this is where we think that the market is going to go, but we don't know. Our industry is just like every other industry out there. There are forces at play, these global forces at play that we cannot control or predict. So if we can get a quick deal, then we feel that the housing market and interest rates could recover in the next few months, especially if we get a hawkish Fed chair who is willing to lower the Fed rate a little bit more. Man, I could bring down the inflation all around the United States and just across the entire general economy. We feel good about that. But if we can't get a good settlement, what are we going to do? Mortgage apps are the lowest in 4 weeks that they have been in a very, very long time because of this war. We need to see a housing market that is churning. We like to see that, right? We like to see a lot of liquidity, a lot of fluidity in the market. Transaction count is very important to real estate. Not so much profitability, right? But it's really more about just transaction count and seeing houses being bought and sold. And this war has really slowed that down. We would like to see that. I think everybody in the world wants to see this war come to an end. We would like to see that Iran no longer has nuclear weapons and bring some peace and stability. I have friends of mine who are Iranian. Of course, we're seeing more stories come out. I think Americans are starting to realize more and more every day that Iran wasn't always under the control of the Ayatollah. It was actually more westernized not that long ago. And that it was when the Shah fell and Jimmy Carter basically is back on the Shah and allowed that regime to fall to current regime, that is when we saw things and the horrors and the atrocities that we were seeing, just human rights violations off the charts in Iran. I am not a fan of war. We don't love war. We want to see peace. I am a Christian. That is very important to me that we have peace in the world. So I would never relish in lower interest rates due to a war. That is not something that I enjoy. This situation, though, we would like to see come to an end so that we can have our interest rates come back down to where they should have been. And we can see an end to the spike in oil prices and fear that it's instilling in the world that we're going to see a lot of inflation. In the United States, our economy is quite strong, but so we don't feel these tremors and sometimes earthquakes in the way that people in other countries feel it. We have to also remember that, the world is a global economy. It's not just about the Middle Tennessee market or even in the United States. Long term, what are we going to see? It's very interesting because as we've seen here, that the price of oil has a huge impact on the price of goods all around the world and can immediately impact inflation and interest rates. When we've seen interest rates go up 0.4% in just a matter of weeks for that to happen, that it's very volatile now. The day-to-day swings in the interest rates points to volatility. Investors don't like volatility. But what we may see over the next couple of years could be really interesting because with the oil in Venezuela becoming more available, and Venezuela being one of the top oil producers, and with, if these sanctions in Iran, if we can have a regime change and end the nuclear program in Iran, it would free up Iranian oil as well, that we could actually see oil prices globally in the long term come down more, which would be very interesting to see how that would impact global economy and interest rates and what kind of stability that would bring to every economy all around the world. I don't know. We got to sit back and wait and see how all of this plays out. Maybe it's all part of his crazy plan that he's got for us. Guys, thank you so much for being here this week. If you're looking at buying or selling or refinancing, give me a call. I'm not a real estate agent or mortgage loan officer, but I can connect you with some of the best. My phone number is 615-257-0565, and you can visit me at therealdealradio.com. I will see you guys next week. Have a super blessed one. Thank you for being here. Good night.